Listen to this name as if you're hearing it for the first time. Khashkhash ibn Saeed al-Qurtubi. We're talking 9th century Cordoba in Muslim Spain. The year is 889. A Muslim navigator looks west into what medievals call the Sea of Darkness, meaning the Atlantic. He sets his sail and he just goes. And he comes back. This isn't rumor, this isn't some myth. That is the core of the record. Classic historian al-Mas'udi writes that a sailor from Al-Andalus, he crossed the Atlantic and returned with spoils. A tale well known across Spain. People sometimes say that, well, he disappeared, but what disappeared is just the address of his exact landfall. But for sure, he made contact with the Americas. The sailor himself returned with goods in his hold and news from his mouth. So the question is not, did he survive? He did. The question is, where exactly did he go? I want to begin with the water. From Cadiz down past the Canary Islands, the Canary Current runs like a river laid on the sea. It does one thing very well. It carries a capable hull west-southwest towards the Lesser Antilles and the shoulder of South America. 6 centuries later, Columbus rides that same conveyor belt. Any working Andalusian crew in the 800s knew that flow, the same way a rancher would know the wind and would know his cattle. But I want to talk about the skill now. Andalusian mariners were not guessing. They sailed by the sun and the stars, by shadow at noon, and latitude by prevailing trades that set with clockwork, regularity across the open Atlantic. Their boats were stout coastal craft like the Gharib. They were compact and tough. You do not need a floating palace to cross an ocean. You need a crew that reads water, trims canvas, and trusts the cycle of the winds that has not changed since Allah, God Almighty, laid the seas in their beds. Now let's talk about the route. From a port on the Andalusian Atlantic, which was identified by some readings as Delba, near today's Palos de la Frontera, a westbound crew tops off at the Canaries, waits for a steady window, and lets the current and the trades press them into blue water. The Sea of Darkness is a poet's phrase for a pilot who knows his craft. It's just a road. What did Kashkash find? The record says he brought back spoils and a story of peoples beyond the horizon. But ask yourself this, do barren mid-ocean rocks explain spoils and descriptions of people, or does a peopled coast with goods to trade make more sense? The Caribbean and the northern coast of South America fit the seamanship exactly, the current and, well, the outcome. He left with empty hands and he returned with them full. This implies contact. Now the receipts that make this more than a beautiful story. On his third voyage in 1498, Columbus records reports from the people of Hispaniola that black people had come to their islands from the south and the southeast. Those visitors, well, they traded spearheads made of a metal called guanine. Now, Columbus sent samples to the royal assayers to figure out what they was made of. The result came back 32 parts, 18 gold, 6 silver, and 8 parts copper. That's the ternary alloy that West African smiths were famous for. The direction matches the Guianas and Brazil, the very lane the Canary Current feeds. Words can be argued, however, metal does not lie. Put that next to Kashkash and watch as the horizon widens. A Muslim navigator sails west in 889 and returns with spoils. 6 centuries later, islanders talk of dark-skinned mariners arriving from the south and southeast, and their traded metals match West African practice between those bookends. The ocean has never changed. That road is still the same. Here's where 2 Muslim historians press the case. Dr. Gerald F. Dirks lays out continuity. The early Muslim voyages recorded in Islamic sources, later Muslim presence documented in the Americas, and a simple call to connect what the ocean allows with what the texts actually report. If a navigator from Cordoba returned with goods in 889, if Caribbean chiefs prized an alloy that matches West Africa, and if we later find African Muslims in large numbers in the American South, then the most reasonable reading is not that the West was a wall. It was open water that someone was already crossing. Dr. Abdullah Hakim Quick points to the westbound current. He speaks about Arabic-speaking geographers who placed lands in the Western Sea centuries before Columbus in 1492, and to West African ambition, kings and mariners facing the sunset and moving towards it. He reminds us that you do not risk fleets, reputation, wealth, and life on a futureless ocean unless you have prior knowledge. Prior knowledge comes from prior voyages. Prior voyages means that somebody came home. This is what return with spoils really means. It means landfall. It means trading partners. It means a crew that not only found their way out, but timed the homeward arc. Riding the northward trades down the westerlies back, angling toward the Azores and then into safe water for Al-Andalus. That round-trip pattern is the heartbeat of the Atlantic. Khashkhash wrote it. Why doesn't the record give us a street and a shoreline, you might ask? Because medieval travel accounts often name the feat, note the return, and they don't really care about the coordinates. The sailor's survival and his return with the goods back home, that's what stuck. The exact bay fades. That's not convenient though for a textbook. It's absolutely normal though for that era. So here's the line that you can hold without blinking. His name, Khashkhash ibn Saeed al-Qurtubi, a Muslim pioneer. Where? Al-Andalus, centered on Cordoba. The year was 889. What did he do? He crossed the Atlantic and he returned with spoils. And what is reported by al-Mas'udi is that this is a well-known story in Spain. The seamanship, the Canary Current, northeast trades, latitudinal sailing, tough coastal craft. Inference that fits the facts. A peopled landfall with goods to trade, best explained by the Caribbean or the northern shoulder of South America. And here's the clincher that turns the possibility into a pattern. In 1498, those islanders speak of black mariners from the south and southeast. They trade guanine. We know what the assay says. That alloy belonged to West African Muslims. The current points from Africa to the Caribbean. Now we put Kashkash back on that road and the picture snaps into focus completely. Do I think Kashkash reached the Americas? Yes, because the water takes you there. The skills existed to ride it, and the record says he came home with something more than empty tells. And later testimony lines up with African contact in the very direction that current delivers you. And we have more stories to come on that same contact. And now, one last whisper from that far shore. Centuries after 889 and before Columbus, there are reports of shipwrecked sailors from North Africa taken by native people along the American coast, held, questioned, and then released when a man stepped forward from the Indians of America speaking Arabic. The archivists are still chasing the perfect page, but if that scene happened even once, it means this. Long before Columbus, Arabic had already crossed, which means somebody brought it, which means somebody made it. And then we have artifacts and cave drawings. But that's for next time. So remember the name and number. Remember Khashkhash, 889. Not a slogan, but a sailor, a route, a return, and a wake that, if you listen closely, is still breaking on a Caribbean beach. This is the Muslim Cowboy, and this is Lost Muslim History. Until next time, salam y'all.